Hi everyone, welcome to the Career Podcast. I'm your host Rochi. Each episode, we sit down with leaders across different industries to talk about their journeys, the skills that matter today, and how you, our listeners, can get ahead in your own career. Today, our focus is on supply chain, and I'm joined by Chris Andrassy, the co founder and CEO of Astral Insights. Astral Insights is a boutique firm helping companies harness AI to transform their supply chain operations. Chris also has worked at PwC and advised multiple startups on analytics and AI. He's also going to be a speaker at CHAINge North America, which is an annual conference that brings together supply chain leaders from all across the globe. It's sponsored by ASCM, which is the Association for Supply Chain Management, and this year it's being held in Columbus, Ohio on the 9th and 10th of September. Without further ado, let's get started. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rachi. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great having you. A quick agenda for this episode, especially for our listeners. We're going to dive into Chris's journey into entrepreneurship and the story behind Astral Insights. Would love to touch on how AI is transforming supply chain careers in 2025, and if you have any advice for students and new grads navigating today's job market. And finally, would love to take a look at CHAINge North America, where we all know you'll be speaking alongside leaders from institutions like IKEA, Google, Harvard, and more. For our listeners, if you stay till the end, we have a special discount code where you'll get $200 off on your ticket. With that being said, Chris, are you ready to get started? Should we dive into a conversation?
Let's dive in.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to start with Astral Insights. What is Astral Insights and how did you come about with the idea of co-founding it?
Astral Insights is a boutique AI enablement firm. And what that really means is helping our clients not only understand why and where to apply AI to their supply chains, but providing them the technology as well as the expertise and the guidance to go through and implement such technology and then make sure it continues to operate and support their ongoing operations. Really, the company started during the 2020 pandemic. Myself and my co-founder, we were working at several consulting companies in New York City.
Mhm.
And during the pandemic, everything, as everybody knows, really shut down. And one of the big things that stopped was the travel that I was doing as a consultant, which was really one of the most exciting parts of it for me. And so as that stopped, it really made me start thinking about what else could we potentially do. And my co-founder and I had actually gone to university together, and we were both in a program at Lehigh University up in the Northeast called Integrated Business and Engineering. And one of the focuses of that program was entrepreneurship. And so during that, we had been given a lot of opportunity to create company ideas and to talk with investors and really just go through that whole process of finding a problem in the market, building a company idea, and going after it. So it was really the combination of the seeds that I think that program planted for me and my co-founder, combined with our careers being shaken up a little bit during COVID,
Mhm.
that we decided to try it on our own. We decided to start offering business intelligence and analytics services to various businesses in manufacturing and supply chain, which happened to be where we were already working at our consulting careers. And really from there, we started seeing the opportunity not just in providing data driven insights and information for operational decision making, but then using AI as the years went on to do so even at another level. So, in many ways, it wasn't that we had this one grand idea of starting Astral Insights to really be all about AI the way that we are today, but it was really following the natural evolution of the post-COVID supply chain world, all the disruption we saw, combined with the opportunity that a lot of the new technology over the past few years provided us. And so we've really just continued to evolve and adapt over this last 5 or 6 years.
I see. And would you say like is your main service mainly business intelligence and like sort of streamlining operations, or is there more to it?
I would say it's using AI to do a lot of that. We focus on this idea of being able to respond quickly to operational and supply chain disruptions. That's really the biggest theme to the services and the technology that we provide is that ability to be proactive in responding to whether it's a supply shortage or it's inflation or it's tariffs, all of these different themes that we've seen. We notice that many companies, whether they're Fortune 100 down to mom and pop manufacturing shops, as an example, all face some variety of that challenge. And oftentimes, data combined with artificial intelligence provides a way to get ahead of some of those disruptions and ultimately, to your point, streamline their operations and keep costs low.
Got it. I see, like, since you mentioned tariff, and like obviously AI, I think these are the two biggest trending words right now. Everyone's talking about it. Every business has been impacted by it. Um, and since you said that a lot of the supply chain work or a lot of the disruptions that happened, we can leverage AI to sort of streamline and tackle the problem. Could you talk a little bit about, or if it's one of your clients or in general, how do you think AI is playing a role in redefining supply chain today?
So, one of the biggest themes we're seeing is shortening the gap between planning and execution. And what I mean by that is so in supply chain, of course, you often have planning processes like sales and operations planning and integrated business planning that seek to effectively unify the demand that a customer has with the supply and the materials required to, let's say, meet that demand in a manufacturing example. And I'll tend to use manufacturing examples because that's the industry that we tend to focus on the most and where our clients typically are.
Mhm.
So that's typically the theme at a high level. But oftentimes, what we see is that those plans don't always come to reality. And oftentimes, we face challenges when, let's say, we set our demand at $100,000, just to use a super easy example for a given time period. But all of a sudden, there's some sort of shock to that. Our customers, for some reason, experience a surge in demand that's higher than we expected. Or maybe all of a sudden, there's something like port congestion, like we saw in COVID, or there's a tariff or an increased price, where now we actually aren't able to get the material required to satisfy the demand that we thought we would have. There's so many different data points available that tell us that sort of information, but it's very difficult for humans alone to make sense of it. And to try to make sense of it is often very, very time consuming. So
Mhm.
that's where we leverage AI and specifically actually AI agents to look through all of those vast data sets to understand the impact of those disruptions on our business and on our plans, and then provide recommendations for the decisions that we can make to continue with our operations in light of those disruptions. And so I often talk about it of this idea of bridging that gap between planning and execution, using AI to understand quickly when there are disruptions that affect our plans and allow us to continue executing without either disappointing customers or losing money or having our expenses get out of control. It's really how do we continue steering our ship even in the face of unpredictable disruptions.
I see. So leveraging AI agents, I feel like this term also like this sentence in itself, I feel like we have been hearing a lot, especially in the tech field, where we see a lot of the entry level roles are, at least that's what people are saying, that AI agents can do 50% of the work or 60% of the work. We haven't heard a lot about it in the supply chain field. Um, for someone who's, let's say, a student right now or about to graduate or either considering to major in supply chain, um, what are some skill sets specific to, since you mentioned AI agents, or what can they do to prep themselves to better enhance their growth in the supply chain field while leveraging AI and AI agents?
The biggest thing would be how to be resourceful and in many ways learn how to learn. You'll often hear in college. So for supply chain or really any type of field, it's that ability to leverage the internet and be able to learn various skills. And the reason I say this is because the technology is changing so quickly.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, curriculums don't necessarily adapt. Curriculums, of course, will give you those business themes and those supply chain frameworks and concepts that are important. But then it's up to us as students, for example, to actually go out and learn those specific technical tools that will help them be more productive in their potential future careers. And so I don't worry as much about AI replacing entry level roles per se, but it's more about adapting what those roles look like. And I think as somebody who hires, when I look at fresh grads or younger individuals, I'm certainly looking for that resourcefulness and that ability to find and learn various technical tools to do their jobs more quickly, more efficiently, and ultimately bringing more value to the company. So it's not really about looking at AI as human versus AI. I think it's much more about how do we tie human skill sets with AI and use AI really as an accelerant to do the work of maybe two people or three people and to be.
More resourceful. Got it. Yeah, I think you perfectly put it together that it's not humans versus AI, it's more so humans with AI just trying to be more resourceful. Do you have any like specific tools or any specific softwares that you recommend that hey, if you're like a junior or a sophomore trying to get internships, I think this is like a cool AI tool to use or be aware of.
The one that, of course, everybody has probably used by now is ChatGPT. And something I would recommend is $20 a month, getting the pro version of ChatGPT and not just using it as a glorified search engine. I think a lot of people use it just to sort of answer basic questions, and certainly it is good at that.
Mhm.
But where I've seen a lot of success in my own role and talking to other people, whether they're more established executives at our client companies or whether they're individuals looking for their first role out of school, is using tools like ChatGPT as brainstorming partners. So
Mhm.
working alongside the AI to help you do research, to help you think through different ideas, to help you question assumptions that you might have about whatever you're working on. So that could be doing research about, maybe we'll bring it to the tariff example. How are tariffs affecting the retail industry? Let's say I'm looking for a job in retail, or affecting the logistics industry. Instead of just going and asking basic questions, I could throw out a theory and tell ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, be a devil's advocate and tell me the three potential shortcomings or risks about this theory that I have. And then I can go back and forth and really use ChatGPT to help me refine my thinking and help me find information more quickly than I otherwise could. And so there's a lot of other tools, whether it's Claude or Grok or Gemini, and certainly there's even more industry specific tools. But I think that's a good way just to get started and get familiar with using AI. And I think through having those, let's say, brainstorming sessions, those could also be really useful stories and anecdotes that you could talk about in a job interview that show how you're using AI in a very tangible way, to help refine your thinking. And I think it also shows a sense of intellectual humility, meaning I'm willing to challenge my beliefs that I might be wrong, and I'm using AI to help me do that. So there's probably 50 other examples, but I think that's one that, regardless of what industry you're looking to get in, and regardless of how technical you are, you can get that $20 subscription and immediately start doing some of that.
Got it. Yeah, I think you gave a really good example that you shouldn't just be using it for like don't replace ChatGPT with Google where you were looking up everything up on Google, but now you're just looking it up on ChatGPT. Try to use it more productively to your advantage and try to like the I think the tariff research example was a very good one. Like I think even I didn't approach it that way. I think summarizing multiple resources, like multiple websites, ChatGPT could be a great resource just to do research and understand what's happening and what are some shortcomings that you could potentially either talk about in an interview or just help bridge that gap. I think that I would like to pivot to, since you mentioned interviews, and I think one thing that reminds me in today's job market, like all the students that I speak to, is that getting an interview is super hard because all these AI tools out there, they're helping people mass apply in like less than a minute. So you don't have to go through every single job posting. You can just upload your resume to one tool and it'll apply to 100 jobs. So now it's getting very hard, and there's a lot more emphasis now on networking and like the human connection. Like you need to know a bunch of people in the company, or at least someone in the company who can vouch for you to get you in.
Yep.
Um, do you have any tips for those who are trying to build their network early in their career?
I think it's a great question. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, even talking to friends and family members who are in college right now. And I think you're spot on that there definitely is and will continue to be an emphasis on human connection and networking. And I think sometimes people think of that as this sort of a nebulous term, networking. What exactly does that mean? Is it attending events? Is it contacting people on LinkedIn? I think it does look like a variety of those things, but one of the biggest things is showing initiative and being genuinely curious. So that could look like connecting with, yes, the hiring managers, but maybe somebody, let's say, who went to the same college as you and they're 3 years into their role. Maybe I'll just shoot them a connect message on LinkedIn that, hey, saw you went to the same school as me. I'm very curious to learn a bit more about your career journey. I think I'd like to go on a similar journey. Would you be willing to spare 10 or 15 minutes of your time? And I can tell you that you definitely will get people saying yes. Some people might be busy and say no, but if you take some time and reach out to some people who have that warm connection, they went to your same college, or maybe they grew up in your hometown, or maybe it's a friend of an aunt or an uncle. Those types of things, and just coming from the angle of being genuinely curious. I think it goes back to the age-old saying that people like to talk about themselves and people like to be genuinely helpful. So that angle I've seen be quite effective. And then once you get into those conversations, you can ask them for those tips of, what specifically might help my resume stand out for this company. Because to your point, it is often very difficult to stand out just from a resume alone and from a mass apply alone. But by having some of those conversations and finding people who are genuinely willing to help, that'll go a very, very long way.
Yeah, I think like I can attest to what you said, like reaching out to school alumni. Like I went to Michigan State University, and when I was recruiting last fall, like I had to reach out to a bunch of my alumni, and they were all very kind to just spare 15 minutes and 20 minutes and just take a look at my resume and talk about what helped them and sort of learn from their journey. So I definitely agree with that. Um, I know you mentioned in the beginning that should people also be attending networking events. And I think that brings me to this very amazing conference that you're going to speak at, which is Change. What do you think? I guess, okay, let me move back a little. Could you talk to us a little bit about what your speaking session at Change is going to look like?
Absolutely. And I'm participating in two sessions. So one of them is going to be more of a roundtable discussion, and one of them, as they're calling it, is more of a breakout session. But both are really focused on some of the ideas we touched on earlier, which is leveraging AI in a practical way to help with supply chain orchestration and supply chain operations. So some of that is all around that concept of disruptions, and some of it's also around just using AI to automate those repetitive menial tasks so that us as humans can focus more on the human to human connection and the strategic creative type of work. So it's really going to be a blend of those things, and I'm excited about it because both sessions are going to be interactive. And so I hope that people are going to learn from the experiences I'm going to share from my client work, but also learning from them in the challenges that they're seeing out there and their day-to-day roles. So it seems like it's going to be a really awesome format, and I'm quite excited for the event.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Like not only just hearing you speak, but as you said, trying to hear from other leaders and experts that are there in the field and trying to understand what's happening in today's supply chain era. Um, I just had one last question. I think our conversation has been great so far. There's a lot of learnings to happen. I guess before we wrap up, do you have any final advice for our listeners, especially those who are, let's say, an early career entrepreneur or an early career student? Um, what should they be looking out for, or any final piece of advice for those who are entering the supply chain field right now?
I think being genuinely curious and interested in the field goes a really long way because that'll show up in a lot of the small things you do, whether it's that extra brainstorming session with GPT or reaching out to a few extra people or posting on LinkedIn about something that you find interesting. I think coming to the table with a genuine interest in the field makes it more fun. It'll naturally make you more engaging to talk to, and ultimately that will go a long way. And so I think too, for an event like CHAINge, where it's a big conference, there's going to be a lot of events. I think doing some research and understanding what are those two or three or four topics that you're the most interested in, and go in seeking out those sessions, and maybe go in with a few thoughts or opinions that you can then refine throughout the sessions will be super helpful. And the last thing I always recommend is even bringing a notebook and just taking notes. When you hear something interesting, jot it down because there's a lot of events and a lot's going to happen, and sometimes it's difficult to remember exactly what you were thinking in that moment. So I think coming with a few things you're genuinely curious about, taking good notes, and then using that event as really a way to refine your thinking is going to be really effective.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll for sure be doing that. Like I've already made a list of sessions that I want to go attend and hopefully gain something useful out of it. And I'll definitely make sure to jot it down. Um, but yeah, this was super amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris, and for sharing these insights. And to all our listeners, if you want to attend CHAINge North America happening in Columbus, Ohio on 9th and 10th of September, on your screen, you'll see a special $200 discount code. We'll drop it in the description as well. But thank you again for your time, Chris. This was super insightful.
Thank you, Rochi. It's been great talking with you and looking forward to seeing you next week in Columbus.
Oh, yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you again.
Thank you.